A recent survey by Indeed showed that 52% of respondents are feeling burned out at work. More than two-thirds of respondents claim that this feeling has actually worsened over the course of the pandemic, which is no surprise. This has made the topic of preventing employee burnout more important than ever. I'm Skye Schooley, a staff writer with business.com, and today I'm joined by Shane Metcalf. He's the co-founder and chief people and culture officer for 15Five, a company that helps organizations build highly engaged, high-performing teams, to talk about how to prevent employee burnout. Hi, Shane. Thanks so much for joining me today to talk about employee burnout prevention. Why is it so important to prevent employee burnout from happening?
Well, thanks for having me, Skye. So employee burnout is a huge liability for companies today. The world is more intense than it's ever been. There's more external factors that are influencing burnout, but there's also a lot of internal factors that influence burnout. And so why is it important that companies should actually take this upon themselves and say, hey, let's actually think about this. Let's actively work to prevent burnout, is that, at the end of the day, it's going to make you money and it's going to save you money. So if we're going to speak to a pure economic factor, preventing burnout is good business. There are just countless costs associated with burnout: lost productivity, lost engagement, by people, reaching the tipping point of like, I'm burnt out, this company's not supporting me, I'm out of here. It costs, anywhere from 4 to 6x a person's annual salary to replace them. So if your top talent is burning out and then either not producing great results or just leaving, it's going to cost you, the business, a ton of money.
So are there any type of employee benefits that you can offer to potentially prevent employee burnout from happening?
Yeah, there's, I think of burnout prevention as kind of a pyramid. And at the bottom of that, the foundation of preventing burnout is having a healthy culture. Nothing accelerates burnout faster than you having contentious, negative, and toxic relationships inside of a company. Just to think, and we've all probably been there, when you're having a deep conflict with somebody at work, or you just feel discriminated against, you feel like you are singled out, like you want to avoid the people you work with, that is going to accelerate the experience of burnout dramatically. And so healthy relationships, healthy culture, a general sense of respect and being respected is foundational. And then on top of that, then you can start to layer in interesting things. Other benefits of that are really helpful for preventing burnout are things that aren't necessarily perks, that are just baked, but are foundational to a good business. Career pathing. Do people have a sense of seeing a bright future for themselves at this company? Is there mentorship available? Because often burnout occurs from either too much, not having enough psychological detachment from work. And so it's just like, you might love your work, but if you burn 24/7, it's just constantly thinking about work, and you're not out getting emotional renewal, you're not out, getting in nature, you're not doing other things you love, you're not spending quality time with family and friends, then you're going to burn out. But that's usually not actually the reason most people burn out. It's usually they stop seeing a bright future for themselves at a company. They feel like they're just hitting their head against a brick wall. Their career's not growing. There's not expansion. So can you create expansion for people? Can you help them progress? Can you help them, even if you don't have that role available for them now? Can you paint a picture of what's possible? And so those are some of they're not even benefits. They're just principles of a well-run organization and what HR and people operations can do to help influence this sense of optimism inside of our companies.
So we know that a lot of people are still working remotely. I think you had also mentioned that. Does burnout look different to remote workers? Does it present itself differently? And if so, are there different strategies or tools that you can use to help prevent that from happening when workers maybe aren't working inside the office?
Yeah, so and we're in a really interesting dynamic here where it's remote, but it's also remote in a pandemic. And so remote doesn't necessarily mean social isolation. whereas that is more likely now than ever before for remote work. And we're social creatures. There's a lot of studies that show the number one indicator of longevity is the number of low touch social interactions that a person has in their day-to-day life, the quality of those social interactions. And so we need each other. We need other humans. And we often, as work has become one of the mainstays of community in our life. And I really think that we have this opportunity to build communities, not just companies, where people can have deeper authenticity, deeper authentic connection and relating with their peers. And you can do some of that virtually. And there's interesting ways, like we have a game called Question Friday. Every Friday, we get on and get vulnerable and share stories from our lives. And it's really beautiful. And you just kind of fall in love with people as they talk about their perspectives and their experience. But when people are remote and they're not able to be immersed in their own in-person relationships, that becomes tricky. One of the things that we do, and that is starting to open up again, is department and company-wide retreats. But getting together in person once a year is invaluable. And I predict we're going to see the rise of the company retreat, the offsite, just explode this decade, because the quality of relationships that you can have once you've met in person as a virtual relationship is completely different. Once you spend a week with somebody in person, you can get on a Zoom call and have a very different level of rapport and trust and communication with them than if you've never met them in person. And so I am a huge fan of company retreats and then department retreats as a way of bringing all the constituents together, have an amazing experience. I like to think of them as transformational business retreats, because we're not here to just plow the alcohol and call that bonding and then work all day. It's a third work, a third personal development, and a third social bonding is the formula that I use for designing our retreats. And so burnout is different in a remote world. We need to get better at establishing non-transactional manager-employee relationships, because it's really easy when it's virtual to just kind of stick to the business and not get personal, not understand what does this person really want in life? What are their ambitions? What are their career ambitions? What are their life ambitions? Who's their family? What do they care about? What are their own personal values? How do they like to receive feedback? How do they know, how do you know if they're stressed and are maybe a little under-resourced? And there's easy ways of getting that information. You just need to be a little more deliberate about it.
Great. So before we wrap this up here today, how can employers measure and monitor employee burnout, just so that way they can track it and ensure that it's not getting out of hand?
Yeah. So, there's a number of ways of measuring and monitoring this. I think I would start with a foundational engagement survey. And so either a biannual, we do triannual, we found is a good quarter. A good mantra is don't measure faster than you can act upon, because you don't want to just always be getting feedback and never doing anything with the feedback. We found that to be about 3 times a year. And so that gives us basically a full diagnostic scan of the health of our organization based on a number of key psychological drivers: shared values, fairness, capacity, rest. We actually measure rest and how rested our people feel. Because again, you want to be looking at your PTO, FTO time off data, and not so much of trying to keep it under a max, but you really should be setting minimums. Those are the big measurements, and you get a lot of really great data from that. But then you should be looking at check-ins, and not to be too self-promotional, but have some kind of a system for continuous feedback, something that allows you to get insights and data and ask questions and have dialogue that is smaller chunks than the engagement survey, so that managers can be getting this insight of what's not going well, asking that question of where are you stuck, what's not going well in your role on a regular cadence weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, is going to give you as a manager, let alone me as chief people officer, a ton of very valuable insight, because people are going to share. Like, that's why you have to build a culture of trust in the first place. And also that awareness that it's okay to be approaching burnout. We have so much history as a business community of saying burnout is a badge of honor. Sleeping 6 hours is a badge of honor. Like just plowing through it and ignoring our body, ignoring our mind, and just getting the work done at all costs is a badge of honor. And we need to change that narrative, because burnt out people are not as creative, they're not as productive, and we are not going to be getting the best out of our people. Supporting people, being well rested, well hydrated, playful, psychologically safe is how we're going to get the best ideas and the best work out of our people. And it also happens to be a way that we're going to leave our people better off than we found them.
Well, thank you so much, Shane. That was all that we had today.
Thank you, Skye.